morning, Rich. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. You saw me backstream. I sprinted downstairs to fill up a coffee during the jingle there. So catching my breath, but we got to have coffee for coffee chats, right? Like you can't have an empty cup getting started.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited. This is going to be a really fun show for me. I think a very fun show for you in the audience as well. This is going to be interesting. Like we were talking about behind the stage. Normally it's the other side. It's you asking me questions. And so look, this is an open dialogue. Ask me questions along the way. For everybody here on the live stream, jump in, ask questions. I promise Rich doesn't want me to iterate every one of these questions on my run of show. He'd rather answer the questions that you've got and you're curious to get into. And a question for everybody out there. I'm curious, in the last 6 months, if you're an MSP or a vendor, what have you changed in your service stack because of AI? Or have you made any changes in your service stack because of AI? And so just a little teaser question while we wait for people to pile in here. Now, Rich, I'm excited to get you here, and I'm excited to get talking about your story and your learnings over the last year. We're going to jump into how fast AI is really changing the landscape, what the channel is seeing and around the media and the front lines, what leaders should be watching and doing next. And so those are kind of our core 3 segments. But before we do that, Rich, I think a lot of people know you, but maybe they don't know the story of you. And so take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about your journey into where you are now, and we'll get jumped in on the show right after that.
Yeah. I have been in the world of managed services for 22 years now, and I've got the gray hairs to show. I mean, so back, to the origin days of managed services. Before that, I worked in marketing for a number of years at Microsoft. And so my sort of, entry into the industry basically was as a technical writer, and then a marketing writer, and then just a marketer. And I spent like 5 years as a full-time employee, a few years as a contractor at Microsoft, which was an amazing experience. And eventually, though, I kind of needed to do something else and decided the writing part of what I had done before Microsoft was what I was most passionate about. And so I went out and I became a freelancer, did a lot of that for a bunch of years, but not too long after I exited Microsoft, I got a call from a very dear friend of mine named Michael Siggins, who had been a vendor of mine at Microsoft. And he and some investors that he and some other folks had rounded up were launching this magazine. And Michael tells me it's a brand new thing. It's going to be for the SMB channel. We're going to call it Channel Pro. Right now, what we have is a name and a logo, and we need to get the first issue out in this was November of 2006. And they wanted the first issue out in February, and they had a name essentially. And so Michael's like, I'm working on the business side of this. Can you help me out on the editorial side? And I said, absolutely. And so I was the founding editor of Channel Pro. I didn't become full-time there, and then eventually become executive editor until significantly later. But 2006 to 2023, I'm a part of the clan at Channel Pro. And then in 2023, similar kind of thing with Microsoft. Microsoft was amazing. Channel Pro was amazing. I still have amazing friends over there. Started feeling restless, time for something new, and got involved in 2 different things right away. And so one is Eric Simpson, who a lot of folks in your audience will know. He's one of, if not I'm a little biased, I would say he is the greatest MSP guru out there, but certainly one of them. He and I launched a consultancy called Channel Mastered, which is we work with vendors that have or would like to have or would like to improve an MSP channel. And then the other thing I did was launch my very own publication to cover the world of technology, and especially the SMB channel, and that's called Channelholic. And anyone who's interested in seeing my work there can find it at channelholic.news.
I love it. Hey, we'll make sure everybody has the link at the end too. I'll say this, Rich, and I said it in my post, and I meant it. Channelholic is really one of the newsletters that I read to keep a pulse on the industry. So I was super excited to have you on the show because I don't know the magic you've bottled in it, but you managed to get me caught up on big things and big news in a less than a handful of minutes, I feel like. And then I can dig in and really get the details as I want them. But I feel like you've always got a great take on what's going on, and your pulse on the industry is what I'm excited to get into. I think, I've had a lot of people on the show. I've had MSPs, I've had vendors, I've had practitioners, I've had help desk people, I've had, folks like Eric on the guru side. But I've never had somebody who is sitting down with all of the people from all the different, I guess everybody from all the different benches with one big kind of aggregate thought. And so I think it's going to be a really exciting show. For those in the audience, just tune in and ask questions. We're going to jump into our segments here. But Rich is going to be a brilliant guest for us. I'm excited to see what he's going to help us walk through today. And so, like I said, jump in and it makes it fun. Let's talk about this AI reality and velocity. One thing that I have been really trying to do a lot when I communicate out in the space is cut through some of this noise and bring us down to the reality. I think there is a lot of noise on velocity and pace and speed and everything else going on that's putting MSPs in a position to feel like they have to act now or it's a do or die moment. I mean, that's kind of a loaded spot, but I'd love to first get your reaction to that. Like, we know the velocity is moving fast. How do you think you would compare it to previous shifts on velocity? Let's just start on like the previous epoch, cyber and, managed and ASPs before that. Like, how are you feeling AI in 23 years of experience in our channel? Does it feel faster?
It absolutely does. It feels faster. It feels bigger. So when I kind of think about the AI transformation, the one that I'm most apt to compare it to is the cloud shift that I saw happen over the course of those 22 years and so on. And that was big in terms of requiring a lot of change on the partner side and the end user side. But I mean, that was not nearly as mind-bendingly, I find myself writing articles right now about are there going to be vendors? You think about the SaaS apocalypse and so on. And yes, there will, by the way, but those are the kinds of questions you find yourself asking in the AI, like these huge kind of questions about on what scale is the industry going to be changed by this technology? And then the technology is moving at a crazy pace. And so I guess we'll be talking about cutting through the noise later on in the show. There's a ton of noise to cut through right now. And so, this is fast. This is hard to wrap your brain around. And if you can even keep up with it and begin to wrap your brain around it a little bit, making the connection between what you've concluded and how you run your business, if you're an MSP or anyone else, is difficult. So I mean, from a comparison standpoint, in particular in this case, the technology is moving way faster than people in the channel. People can, and in some respects, people should. Yeah. You were talking about this being, in some eyes, maybe like a do or die kind of moment. And it kind of is. If you're not doing, you're setting yourself up to die. But on the other hand, the opposite mistake, I think, would be to do at a panic kind of scale. And to lose focus on the things that have made your business successful to this point in time, and where the money is coming from, and the health of your customer. So you really don't want to be the MSP, say, with your head in the sand about this stuff, not thinking about how you're going to use these tools internally, not thinking about the services and solutions you're going to bring to customers with AI. You absolutely need to be doing that. Do this in a thoughtful way is, I guess, how I would suggest, as opposed to trying to keep up with an industry that is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
I love the way that you broke it down into bigger and faster. And I want to go to faster in a little bit now, because that's obviously the topic we're talking about today on the show. But I really want to dig on that bigger topic. When you said bigger, you said it's a bigger change. It's a bigger end user change. I think it's a bigger. Do we think it's a bigger opportunity? I'd be curious to get your reaction to that question. Do we think it's a bigger opportunity than cloud? I don't know if you could just throw that out there, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
It probably is. Just if you think about the, so I mean, the thing about cloud is it was really an enabling technology, and it sort of unlocked all sorts of opportunities because of how it brought you software and allowed you to scale software. But I mean, AI is a technology that can, launch industries, transform industries, increase the growth rate and the profitability of industries. There are just a lot of different ways to put it to work that will actually generate money. And then you start thinking about, from the standpoint of the people who are building and delivering AI solutions and services, and you start thinking about like outcome-based pricing. And as the technology gets more powerful and you're delivering bigger and better and more outcomes, you're making more money. So yeah, it does feel bigger in that regard as an opportunity.
Yeah, I like the point that you said it can launch industries. And I think that's something we're seeing in our space. I've been very introspective in our space right now over the last kind of, I would call it 3 to 4 months, really just learning, just coming in and having conversations and listening to people and thinking deeply on this problem. And I hear a phrase thrown around a lot right now. And I think we know where it originated because we were all there at Beyond last year. But I hear this phrase, managed intelligence provider. What's your thoughts on that? We talk about it launching industries. Do we think managed intelligence provider is one of those new industries that gets launched? Do we think it's this is one of the things that I've really been debating in my head. Is it a transformation from MSP to MIP? Or is MIP a completely different thing? I would love to get kind of your reaction to that question. Like, what do you think there?
So I try when this comes up, I try not to get too hung up on the label and the acronym and is it MSP or in my mind the managed intelligence provider concept is where most MSPs need to be moving. So the stuff that MSPs traditionally over the course of the prior couple of decades have done to make money, that's if it's not already commoditized, it's going to be totally commoditized soon. It's going to be automated. And it's not like the automation is fooling the end users. Either I'm already talking to CEOs of very large MSPs whose customers are coming to them and saying, well, if AI is doing all this work that I've been paying you for, why aren't my prices coming down?
Yeah.
So that traditional kind of line of business for MSPs is going away, and both the thing that keeps you relevant to your customers and grows your business in terms of acquiring logos and growing revenue organically with existing customers is going to be that kind of strategic AI consultant, the person who can have a conversation with the customer about business constraints and business objectives. And that person knows this AI stuff can help me with this. I don't quite know how to do it. I think there's an opportunity from what I read around this agentic AI stuff. I don't know how to do that either. You want to be the person who does understand how to do that and can build the solutions and orchestrate the agents and make it all work for them. that's how, I don't know if this is how Pax8 precisely defines managed intelligence provider, but that's how I think about it. And that's where the relevance and the margins are going to be for MSPs going forward.
I think I agree. They put out a data point earlier in the week. I would say maybe the beginning of March or something. The Pax8 Nebulous, they've got now a Pulse Touch data points out there where they're talking about data points they're serving SMBs directly. And SMBs currently using AI tools is at 62%. SMBs experimenting with AI is at 25%. The SMBs expecting AI use to increase in the next year is 67%. So it's obviously a hot commodity to be delivering these types of services if you're an MSP. Or an MIP, or whatever we're going to call it, BSP. We're just going to throw letters around the room and we're going to see what sticks. As you've been sitting in those conversations where, MSPs are having that dialogue with you, my customers are asking about the price, like why, if everything's becoming commoditized, like, have you heard any, any rumblings of something that feels repeatable in the ecosystem? I've got what I'll share there is I've got a post coming out next Tuesday where I said, we can't be the jack of all trades in the opinion of none. Because as I hear a lot of this, we're in this storming phase of experimentation and ad hoc, but storming has to move into norming at some point. And I'm curious, have you heard anything that starts to feel a lot or more like norming and a little bit less like storming? I'm curious, maybe referencing from a write-up you've had in the past, or if there's anything you've heard.
I'm trying to think if there are, and I mean, there are, we're kind of at a stage still where a lot of the work that needs to be done between the MSP and the end user is still, I think, around readiness.
Yeah.
Data readiness, security, governance, discovery, and then like pilot projects, finding something small that you can do that that delivers results. And so that's what comes to mind when I think about repeatable services. That there are people out there at this point who have done enough of that kind of prep work that it's beginning to, or has become packaged is maybe the wrong word, but repeatable. Yeah. We know here's what this engagement is going to be. We've done this, 25 times, and here's what we're going to do for you. And when we come out of it, you're going to be ready to go bigger on AI. In terms of, I'm just trying to think of solutions beyond that. And nothing's springing to mind where somebody had come up with
I thought I'd ask because you've got the inside touch, and I think it's one of the biggest questions that the industry is asking right now. So I didn't anticipate that you'd have the silver bullet, but hearing some of those processes, right? Like if you're an MSP on the show right now or you're watching it later, regurgitating what Rich just said there is like, get a pilot, take that pilot, try to see what's repeatable out of it, do another pilot and iterate. One thing I've said a lot on the around this topic is that we need momentum and not moonshots. And I think what a lot of the space really needs to do is lean into something iterative and something that they can repeat over and over. Storming is fine. And if it's ad hoc and it's experimental, that's fine, as long as there is a guardrail around what that experimentation looks like and, a retrospective after it so that you can build and repeat on it. Storming and experimentation doesn't scale if it's just storming and experimentation without intentionality on the other side of it. And so I think that is a key takeaway for people that are on the show is like, if you haven't boxed in your experiments or, put some parameters around your, outcomes that you think are going to come out and measure against it, start doing it. It's a scientific study. We're back in like 7th grade biology here. But I think that's just something to consider taking away. I pulled us really deep down this bigger side of the conversation. We'll switch it to velocity. Anything you want to add to that before we jump off? Any thoughts on that topic?
No, well, no, except again, to repeat, basically. So the technology is moving very quickly. This goes right to what you were just saying. So you are going to need to move faster than you did before, but you are not obligated to move at a speed of light kind of velocity either. I think a thoughtful, considered kind of approach. What I was thinking of as you were talking there in terms of moonshots and so on. I mean, what you very much want, and the real kind of AI innovative MSPs I know are very good at fostering an internal culture of innovation, where they're encouraging everybody basically to brainstorm, suggest ideas. Here's a crazy thought. Could we do this with it? Could we do that? Here's something I vibe coded. It's actually saving me some time. Maybe everybody should be using this. I talked to, I think it was Peter Melby from New Charter, who I was talking about with this, and he said at one point, don't get too hung up on ROI. Like, is this a good idea? Is this an interesting idea? Is this something we should experiment more with? Is this something we should pursue? Because if it is, and we're not doing everything at once, the ROI will follow, kind of a thing. So yeah. I would encourage people to make sure that the entire company is thinking creatively about how to use AI, and that the decision makers are thinking in a thoughtful kind of way about how to turn what that experimentation creates into repeatable products that you can bring to a customer with a reasonable expectation of strong results and positive word of mouth afterwards.
I love that statement. One of my last job at Auvik before I left was all about our AI rollout. That's what I did. I did an AI rollout at Auvik, and I spent a year, taking us from, I think we had 5 to 10% of employees. By the end of it, we had about 80% of employees, and all sort of agents rolled out and doing fun things there. And I think the statement of don't get caught up in ROI was a statement I made that when you report to the metrics-driven president, didn't really scream resonation or didn't resonate so well. But I think it's a critical point, because what that statement is saying, and what a lot of what you just said, is this is a cultural transformation before a value creation. And I think that's the sticky wicket. If we really wanted to pull that thread back, we could probably go the next 20 or 30 minutes, and I'd be happy to go down it if you want. But I think that's the sticky wicket of what MSPs are struggling with. It's, org change is hard internally. Org change for clients is incredibly hard. And as we talk about MIPs, we have to become professionals in not only technology change, but organizational change. And I think that's where you get into this thing where if you're Peter, you can say at the top of the helm, don't worry about ROI. I run this and we're going to make it happen, and we're going to give you greenfield time to do it. But as an MSP talking to the client and saying, don't worry about ROI, it becomes a much harder topic. So maybe that's a topic for another day, but that's a heck of a sticky area that I see in our space right now, is how we're going to do that, because we've always driven tech change, never really org change.
Just a thought on that sparked, and I don't know if this is a tangent or not, but so I've got a podcast too. It's called MSP Chat for anyone who's interested in it, and we just recently interviewed Evan Rice, who is the president and COO of Rev.io. And he spoke at one point during the conversation, because we were talking about, the AI's implications for the workforce and so on. And he used this term at one point in the conversation that I keep kind of coming back to since, of despecialization, where what you hired for in the past was people who had specialized skills. They were coders, or they were really good at financial management, but that you needed specialization. And as AI it becomes more and more capable of doing that kind of work, and coding is the most obvious example, all of a sudden specialization becomes less important in terms of who you hire and retain and look for. And maybe what you start looking for, to kind of follow up on what you were talking, is people who are good with change. Yeah. People who are love to experiment and innovate and are open-minded that way. People with a growth mindset, create. So I haven't quite
Yeah.
figured it all out because this is a conversation from a few days ago. But I really like this idea that as AI kind of does more and more of the skill heavy stuff, there's a different kind of person who's going to thrive in our industry and beyond. And some of that, I think, goes to you're totally right. Change is painful. People will resist change, and those are maybe people who are not going to have as prosperous a future
Yeah.
in tech going forward.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I think when I did this, there's a study out there by McKinsey, but it's called The Superhuman, and you can read up on it to talk about org change and the functional barriers and who's going to be good at change and who's not. They categorize them into people called doomers, gloomers, boomers, and zoomers. And not generational terms, but truly like identifying the traits behind those people. And what defines who's going to be the doomer and who's going to be the zoomer. You talk about the change in the J curve. I don't even think mine's a J curve. I think mine's just a slant. It just doesn't even matter. Change doesn't drive me too much. But that is a real problem because we talked earlier, and when we went down a really fun rabbit hole. I enjoyed this topic on bigger, but we also talked about faster. And so let's second half the show into the faster topic, the velocity side, because if you have if you have a deeper J curve, this velocity is pretty terrifying. So, maybe talk to me a little bit about what you're hearing in the field and from the space with this velocity of change. Like, how are MSPs feeling it? Are you getting a blended response? Is there kind of an overall sentiment? What are you hearing?
Well, this goes back to some of the data. I think it was the PAX8 data that you were referencing earlier on, and so I think we're at a stage now. So we're past the stage of anyone questioning, is this or is this not snake oil?
Yeah,
we're past the stage of should I or should I not be thinking about this and figuring out. We're at this sort of middle step, basically, of the question is not why to, it's how to. And so experimenting with tools, experimenting with solution offerings, there's a lot of that going on, and still it's all surrounded by question marks in terms of where this is going to go and am I doing it right? Basically. So I guess that's the sentiment. I like a year, 2 years ago, people would really be like, I don't even know where to start. Where should I start? I think we're past that. I don't personally detect, with the possible exception of some very large MSPs, enormous confidence that we've got this nailed. There's more of that coming, but I think that's kind of where things sit, right, and just in terms of the vibe I'm picking up.
I'm curious. I think we are, again, still in that early. I at CCF, I used the product adoption curve because I'm a SaaS guy, and that's how I think. I don't think we've hopped the chasm yet, but I do think 2026 will be the year that we hop the chasm. And as we're seeing, I think we're at a point now where AI is moving or creating so much value that it becomes a do or die. And I think that forces the chasm where that value point is now unignorable. I don't even think that's a word, but like, I don't think you're allowed to ignore the value that you get created when, I sit here on my day to day and I've got, Claude doing something over here. I have Copilot Cowork doing something over here. I've got 3 frontier models running, and my working 4 different work streams at once. Like, you can't undo that, or you can't ignore that. And so I think that might force the chasm hop for these SMBs, and even for these MSPs directly. And so I'd be curious, we've got a lot of change happening in the MSP space. We've got the hyperscalers doing a lot, and we've got the traditional, what I would say, MSP vendors doing a lot. They're all here serving our industry. But what do you think feels more disruptive for the MSPs today? Is it the change in the general vendor stream, our ecosystem of people that show up at every show, or is it the hyperscalers that are changing that is making the MSP struggle or be the most disrupted, I suppose.
Well, I think the piece of that MSPs are coming into contact with most often it is more on the vendor side than the hyperscaler or LLM side of things. Not that that any of that is irrelevant to them at all, but we were talking comparatively about AI versus cloud before, and there is something going on right now that feels very familiar in a lot of ways. So cloud becomes the new big thing. And therefore, as an MSP, cloud management becomes a huge part of what you need to be doing for your customers. And the big incumbent management vendors were still kind of stuck in this endpoint oriented mindset. And so you see all of these born in the cloud native vendors come along. And there was this period of time where the question is, will the big guys, the incumbents, be able to adapt fast enough to keep these little nimble, agile cloud native folks from, out competing them, essentially rendering their tools irrelevant. And there is something very similar, I think, happening in the space right now, where you're seeing all of the, particularly in service desk automation, right? Mm-hmm. You're seeing lots and lots of these nimble little born in the AI native startups coming along, and we're watching. It's not as if the incumbents haven't been thinking about this, haven't been doing anything, but there was a kind of automation coming out of the startups that you weren't seeing appear quickly out of the ConnectWises and Kaseyas of the world. And so ConnectWise early this year buys one of those startups, Zofik, right, to jumpstart their move into that new era. It'll be very interesting in a few weeks to see what Kaseya announces. They've been kind of quiet, but I expect that to change very quickly. But they just announced earlier this week that they're opening an office in Silicon Valley. And clearly, that's just, we want to be able to hire the world's greatest AI developers, and they're not necessarily going to want to move, so we'll move to them. That's just fine. So the familiar dynamic is just who kind of comes out ahead in the end. What happened in the cloud era is it took a little while, but the big guys did adjust. They did just fine. Build by our partner, they found a way to continue being relevant. And some of those startups are still out there and making money and so on, but I can't off the top of my head think of any of them that became a sort of titan of the industry. And the story has yet to be written on the AI side, but I suppose if I was placing a bet, I'm thinking it might come out the same way. Here is, and I know, and at the beginning of the, I'm not a big New Year's predictions guy, but I did the one prediction I made January this year was that one of these startups is going to get acquired by one of the big names, and the Zofik acquisition happened 3 weeks later, and I thanked the ConnectWise folks. Thanks. I'm looking like a genius now. Yeah. And the follow-up to that basically was I wrote, that's not the last one. Not this year, not period. We're going to see more of that. Let's see if that's what Kaseya is talking about in a few weeks. So, my gut's kind of telling me it's going to be a similar kind of thing to what we saw before.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I think, being a SaaS founder who has gone through acquisition, right? The force multiple of being into one of these major incumbents is really strong. If you believe in your vision and what you're trying to deliver, the accelerator path of doing that is really, really fast. And so we'll be curious. It'll be very interesting. I think, as another SaaS founder mindset here, right? You're always being challenged to being, what is your defensible moat? And moats are eroding very, very quickly in today's era. But I think you kind of talked about the startups right now. That is a defensible moat. They have that velocity. I mean, before it took a long time for the big ships to move. I mean, it's almost unheard of how fast you move if you become AI native. If you were born in the AI era, so I suppose to say. But it's interesting times there. Let's switch, right? We've got, because let's just say because of that velocity now of all these AI native startups, and because of the velocity of all these change, like how are MSPs supposed to cut through that noise? Like, what do you recommend that they do? There is no shortage of, especially with Gen AI, there is no shortage of articles coming out and content to consume and things to do. And I mean, I'm a kind of a believer a little bit in the dead internet theory, if you're familiar with what that'll end up looking like. If you don't, it's a great read. I think of all people would appreciate it, Rich. But without going too far down to tangent, back to that original question. How do you separate signal from the noise when AI news is hitting the channel every single day?
So I guess the only kind of strategic, I mean, I think about how I kind of manage this, where on the one hand, it's part of my job to have, to be in contact with as much of what's going on as possible without drowning in noise. And I guess the two things that sort of come to mind. So first of all, I'm a big podcast listener.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm looking for there isn't just more industry news. I am particularly interested in interviews with the people who are running these AI companies and building these services. And anytime I can expose myself to the thinking and the smarts of the people who are actually at the leading edge of what's going on, that to me feels like filtering out the noise of all of these, write-ups about what's happening. Let's go straight to the source. And I guess that's the common thread. And the two things I'm thinking about here is to the maximum extent I can, I try to go straight to the source. And so if that's the founder and the CEO, and I just want to hear from them what they're doing, what they're thinking. And these people tend to have a very broad perspective on AI. They can speak with great intelligence about their strategy and their company, but they tend to have really interesting ideas just about where AI is taking the industry as a whole. I want to hear that from them. If I come across an article that references a new study from McKinsey or Forrester or something like that, I will click through to the study rather than read the story about the study. I want to get closer to the source. I'll read the study. That to me feels like a good way to, get past the noise a little bit, get into the substance a little bit faster. So anyway, those are two things I do because I very much feel what you're talking about there.
It feels a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to consume. Do you have any? I'm curious. Any AI tricks you use to keep up with the news? Do you have any Gen AI tricks or anything like that? I don't know. This is kind of a curveball one, Rich.
No, I don't. And I mean, that's the kind of thing this is my own little culture of innovation is I'm always trying to think because I know there are about 58 things that I could, like just low hanging fruit things I could be doing that I'm not. And especially these days with agents, I just keep thinking there's gotta be stuff that I'm wasting time on that. But in that area in particular, no, I don't really have AI out there finding stuff for me yet.
I have ideas, but I would need to know your stack. But we can talk on another day here. I could give you some thoughts.
Please.
I love building agents. I love building all this stuff right now. It is just so fun. Well, let's jump in the final segment here as we get towards the end of the show. I would say, what roles does community play? This is kind of a jump to a different area, but given the velocity and the noise, like what role does community and peer learning play right now with the change in the speed?
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge. I mean, community has been, again, I've been covering the MSP space for a long time, and community and the spirit of community has been integral to managed services from the beginning, and it still is. But at this particular time, the ability to share knowledge and information with peers and to learn from one another and to have like destinations to go for that kind of a thing is enormous, and you're really operating at a deficit if you're not participating. So if you're trying to do it all on your own, essentially, you're just going to wind up missing out on things, moving slower than peers who are taking advantage of community resources out there. And then I was on Dave Sobel's podcast a few months back, and this question kind of came up, and I started sort of free associating about a different way that community writ large might become important, because I had been writing a lot at the time about how these very, very large MSPs have this sort of structural advantage going forward, where they have more customers, therefore they have more data, and more data always equals better AI, and better AI always equals, higher profits, and so on. And there's this kind of flywheel effect, and that's a difficult dynamic to compete with for a smaller MSP. And then that led me to the thought, basically, well, maybe one way for MSPs to combat that is to join forces via community. If you're not interested in selling into a roll-up, you want to remain independent, are there ways via communities that MSPs can kind of join together, pool assets, pool resources? I was kind of talking on Dave's show about pooling data, but you look at these venture-backed MSPs that are out there right now, Titan and Shield Technology Partners, and now Treeline, the newest entry to the field. They've got Silicon Valley AI developers on staff. They're doing amazing things at these companies. If I'm $1 million a year MSP, I can't do that. But if I get together with 200 or 100 others and we pool some money, could we hire a developer and start doing some? It's another interesting thought about how community could be super relevant to MSPs going forward. But yeah, I can't think of a time when it's been more relevant than right now.
Yeah, remind me, Rich. I actually know of a little community of about 30 MSPs who are banding together for this exact topic, for this exact reason. If you would like an introduction, I'd happily put you in there, as I know you're very curious on all these kind of things happening in our space. So just a little side note.
Yeah.
Intro there. All right. So the last kind of key thing I want to jump into here, as we're at 9:45, I like to wrap us up 5 minutes to 10 minutes beforehand. What should MSPs keep their eyes out for on the next 90 days? I'm not asking for another New Year's prediction here, Rich. I'm just asking, what should we keep our eyes out to for, we'll call it over the summer? What do we think is going to happen?
So there is the what do we hear from? So Kaseya used to do 2 events a year, right? After they acquired Datto, there was Kaseya Connect in the spring and DattoCon in the fall, and DattoCon is no more. So this is their big splash at Kaseya, and I'm quite certain they've been very, very busy. They haven't been very, very vocal. And so I know there's something interesting. So next 90 days, that's something I'm very interested in. Next 90 days, that puts us into the PAX 8 Beyond kind of time frame. Those guys have something interesting to talk about every year. Where I was fascinated by the whole agentic marketplace concept, which was what they announced at PAX 8 Beyond last year. So where they have taken that and are taking that in a year is something I'm really interested in. And then the sweeper I will put out there is I don't know about you, John, but it was day before yesterday that Anthropic announced Project Glasswing.
Yeah.
I go back to the earliest days of ChatGPT and generative AI, and everybody's saying, what's your PDoom and so on. And I mean, I had one, but Doom did not feel imminent in any kind of way. I was reading about Mythos and the degree of concern at Anthropic that was so great that they felt they had to create this glass. And I got scared.
Yeah.
And Anthropic sort of opened up the kimono a little bit. Here's some of what we saw going on in the lab, and it was scary. And so it's a race against time, because right now, thankfully for planet Earth, the people who have created this cutting edge model are very safety focused and responsible, and they're doing the right kind of thing with it. But that won't be true forever. And so next 90 days, next 6 months, let's watch the threat landscape.
Yeah.
It's bad, and it could get really bad.
Yeah, no, I know. Project Mythos does scare me a bit too, even. And I tend to be very, very future visionary and not concerned with these things. Seeing that kind of stuff come out really will change our space. We'll have to really be pinpointed on the vendors we're working and aligning with. Talk about a moat. Having access to that model and being able to build it into your threat detection and prevention, that's a heck of a moat, being handpicked by Anthropic. So very interesting space. I'm with you. I think we'll see what Kaseya has to say. We'll see what Pax8 has to say. Nobody gets to get away this year without a massive announcement around AI. And I know that's what it has to be. The board pressure is real on almost every company to have something related to AI play. And so we'll keep our ears open, and I'm sure that'll keep you busy, Rich, as you continue to cover our industry, and as I might say, quite masterfully. So, I'm happy to round up our show here. We have one last segment. We have two last segments, but this one's really quick. It's called the Espresso Shots. It's just a rapid fire wrap up, Rich. The rules are very simple. You have as much time to think about the questions as you want. But you only get me one sentence to answer it. So that keeps it interesting. So only one. The one AI development in the past year that surprised you the most.
Surprised me the most. Okay. And I'm going to sound crazy for being surprised by this, but I guess the speed with which, and it's the last year or so, there's probably something better than this, but the velocity with which OpenClaw took off was a bit of the appearance of that. Well, I only get one sentence. I've blown it. I had a better one. Now I'm thinking about it, but
go for it. I allow semicolons. It's okay.
The speed with which AI coding tools got better, to the extent that so I often joke with people, you put a gun to my head and tell me to write 2 lines of HTML, and I'm a dead man. I cannot code at all, and yet I'm coding apps with AI now, and the speed with which those tools got better enough for the likes of me to use them productively, it was surprising.
It's really good. Yeah, I would say the flash in the pan with OpenClaw shocked me too. I did not expect that overnight to be the next big innovation. Besides Channelholic, what is the one newsletter that you don't skip?
I'm trying to think. I'm going to insult so many people by leaving them out.
Oh, never mind. We don't have to answer that one. What about this? What's one podcast you won't miss?
I mentioned Business of Tech. Dave Sobel's show is tremendous. And I know he's using AI for this. He has an amazing ability to kind of hoover up everything that's happening and sort of cut through a lot of that noise for you. And I'll always get pointed to something that I didn't see, some story or whatever. Yeah. And so I do love that show a lot. I'm a big technology podcast fan. That's a good one. Those are two of them.
Yeah, sorry I threw you in a pinch there, Rich. We pivoted out of that one into the podcast. I get it. We don't want to offend anybody, but yours is still the one I read. I don't care if I offend somebody. It's my show. What's the one conversation MSPs aren't having, but they need to this year?
Internally or with customers, or
wherever you want to take it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll go back to the workforce conversation. So that's more of an internal kind of thing. And setting expectations inside the company with with where the company is going because of AI. Reassuring people, but also helping them understand how their role will evolve and how their mindset needs to evolve. This is where we're going. We want you with us. We're going to have a place for you. If you might not be the level 1 anymore, but I'm pretty confident we're going to have work for you. And but here's what that's going to require of you and of us to get you there. And here's how we're going to do it. I guess that's maybe what comes to mind.
I love it. We talked about a lot today, Rich. Final question I always ask at the end of every single show. What's one topic we didn't hit today that you thought we might have?
Good question. Yeah. Well, I know I was prepared a little bit to speak about something that you and I have talked about before, and it's like we're out of time. You'll have to have me back so we can get into this. But okay. I was referencing vibe coding before, and there's the whole SaaSpocalypse topic, and if I can write it myself, why am I paying somebody? And you have lots of, I think, very interesting thoughts about tech debt. That has shaped my thinking about this issue, and so that was something where I thought we might get into that a little bit.
That's a good topic. As a 16-year software engineer, I have a lot of opinions on vibe coding. I think a lot of people forget that I've been coding since I was like 13. I'm a nerd, you're right. That could have been a 30-minute segment. That is a miss. Well, let's circle this one back up. Will you be at GeekCon this year? I'm curious. I don't know. Not to put you on the spot. We can do it live there if you end up being there. We'll talk about vibe coding.
Unfortunately, I have a conflict, and I'm not able to go to that event. But if nothing else, I'll see you at the PAX 8 show, and I'm sure we'll cross paths before then.
No doubt we'll cross paths. We'll have to. But that's a good topic. You're right. I missed that one. All right, Rich, the final sign-off's real simple. That's a shameless plug. I appreciate you being on the show. I appreciate you talking to the audience, guiding people through some really good facts. I have a tremendous amount of content to write up here. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good nuggets you gave us to take away with. So sign us off. What's your shameless plug? How can they get hold of you? Why should they get hold of you? How do they get into your newsletter? Tell us about your podcast. Tell everybody about everything cool you're doing.
Oh, this is great. And as shameless as can be. No shame.
Absolutely. This is pure shameless at the end of the show.
So the blog is called Channelholic. Like I said, you can find it at channelholic.news. It sells for the low price of free. This will not be true forever. There will be sort of premium offers, but for right now, whatever the heck is keeping me awake at night and I desperately want to write about is available to you for free at channelholic.news. The podcast is MSP Chat, and it's everywhere you get podcasts: YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, beyond. And then the consultancy that works with vendors is Channel Mastered, and that is at www.channelmastered.com.
I love it. Well, Rich, thanks so much. It's been a wonderful time drinking a cup of coffee and enjoying the morning with you over Coffee Chats. We'll see you. Cheers.
You too. Thanks for the invite. I've loved it.
I've had a great time.